Good afternoon and welcome. The products we buy every day, from our smartphones to our coffee, they take a long journey before they reach us. But how much do we know about that journey? Today, we're discussing a critical question at the heart of modern commerce. Should companies be responsible for the ethical sourcing of their products? This means ensuring their materials are obtained through practices that avoid child labor, provide safe working conditions, and minimize environmental harm. To explore this complex issue, I'm joined by two distinguished guests. Dr. Anya Sharma is a professor specializing in corporate social responsibility and argues for comprehensive corporate accountability. And Mr. Ben Carter, a tech entrepreneur, believes the primary focus of a business should be on innovation and growth, leaving regulation to governments. Welcome to you both. Dr. Sharma, let's begin with you. What is your opening argument?
Thank you, Isabel. My position is straightforward. Companies absolutely have a moral and strategic obligation to ensure their products are sourced ethically. In our interconnected world, large corporations are no longer just economic entities. They are global citizens. Their influence often surpasses that of small governments, and with that influence comes a profound responsibility that extends beyond simply maximizing profit for shareholders. This is not just about philanthropy. It's about fundamental business sense in the 21st century. Today's consumers are more informed and conscientious than ever before. They actively seek out brands that align with their values, and they're quick to abandon those that don't. A single damaging exposé about child labor or environmental destruction in a supply chain can destroy decades of brand loyalty and erase billions in market value overnight. Some argue that companies must simply follow local laws, but this is a dangerously low bar. The legal frameworks in many developing nations are notoriously weak, underfunded, or simply not enforced. Relying on these minimums is a deliberate choice to tolerate unethical conditions. Proactive companies must establish their own higher ethical standards and enforce them rigorously among their suppliers. Ultimately, ethical sourcing is an investment in long-term sustainability. It ensures a stable and healthy supply of resources, fosters a skilled and respected workforce, and builds a resilient brand that can weather the court of public opinion. It's not a burden, but a blueprint for a successful modern corporation.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. Mr. Carter, a compelling argument from the moral and business perspective. What's your response?
Thank you. While I appreciate Dr. Sharma's ideals, her perspective, in my view, is impractical and overlooks the fundamental purpose of a business. A company's primary responsibility is to its stakeholders. Its shareholders who risk their capital, its employees who depend on its stability, and its customers who want quality products at a fair price. The greatest social good a business can provide is to succeed in these areas, to be profitable, to create secure jobs, and to deliver innovation and affordability to the market. This is what drives economies forward. The concept of a company policing its entire global supply chain is a logistical and financial fantasy. Consider a single smartphone. It contains hundreds of components, sourced from dozens of countries, often passing through multiple tiers of suppliers, sub-suppliers, and raw material extractors. To audit every single link in that chain, to ensure every worker is paid fairly and every ounce of tin is mined correctly, is an almost impossible task. The cost of such an effort would be staggering. And who do you think pays for that? The consumer. The price of everything, from t-shirts to tablets, would increase significantly. This would make these goods less accessible for lower-income families, effectively punishing them for a problem they did not create. This brings me to my final point. This is the job of governments, not corporations. Sovereign nations must be responsible for creating and enforcing robust labor and environmental laws within their own borders. Expecting companies to act as a global enforcement agency is not only inefficient, it undermines national sovereignty. Our role is to comply with the law, not to write it.
Thank you both for your strong opening statements. You've clearly defined the core of the conflict. Moral ideals versus practical and economic realities. Ben, you immediately raised the issue of rising costs for consumers. Is it truly fair to ask an ordinary family to pay more for a product to cover these ethical audits?
Not only is it unfair, it's a competitive death sentence for companies that operate in good faith. Imagine my company spends millions to ensure our cobalt is ethically sourced, which adds 15% to the final product cost. Our competitor, who doesn't incur these costs, can sell their product for less. The majority of consumers, when faced with that choice, will choose the more affordable option. They might feel bad about it, but their budget dictates their decision. This creates a market where the most ethically minded companies are punished and the least scrupulous are rewarded. It's a luxury belief that sounds noble in a debate, but doesn't work in the real world of household budgets.
Dr. Sharma, is this premium for ethics a realistic expectation for the average consumer?
This framing of the issue is misleading because it presents a false choice. Mr. Carter talks about the cost of being ethical, but he conveniently ignores the enormous cost of not being ethical. When a factory collapses due to unsafe conditions, or a river is poisoned by industrial waste, the costs are immense. They're paid by the victims, by the environment, and often, eventually, by the company itself. Through massive fines, legal battles, and boycotts that can cripple sales. The money spent on auditing and improving a supply chain is not a cost in the traditional sense. It's an investment in risk management. It protects the brand, ensures operational stability, and builds a foundation of trust with the public and with investors, who are increasingly using ESG, environmental, social, and governance criteria to make their decisions. The small price increase, if any, is minimal compared to the long-term value it creates and the catastrophic risks it avoids.
That's an interesting point about risk. Let's move to the idea of jurisdiction. Dr. Sharma, you argue that companies must go beyond local laws. Mr. Carter, you insist this is the government's territory. So how should a company navigate a situation where a country's accepted labor practices, while legal there, clash directly with Western ethical standards?
This is where corporate leadership is essential. Globalization has given multinational corporations incredible leverage. When a major brand enters a developing market, it doesn't just bring jobs. It brings influence. By setting high standards for its suppliers, requiring safer equipment, fairer wages, or forbidding child labor, it can create a ripple effect. Local suppliers will adapt to meet these standards to win lucrative contracts. Over time, this elevates the entire local ecosystem. It demonstrates that economic development does not have to come at the cost of human dignity. It's not about imposing values, but about offering a better, more sustainable model for growth.
I have to strongly disagree with that characterization. What Dr. Sharma calls leverage, many would call economic imperialism. A wealthy Western company arriving in a developing nation and dictating terms is not leadership. It's a form of neocolonialism. It implies that we know what's best for their society. It's incredibly arrogant. Furthermore, what happens when suppliers can't meet these suddenly imposed, expensive standards? The company doesn't just help them, it pulls out. It moves its business to another country that can comply. The result is that a community that was starting to develop suddenly loses its main source of employment. We don't solve the problem, we just move it somewhere else, leaving a trail of economic damage behind. We harm the very people we claim to be helping.
This leads us to the crucial topic of transparency. How can anyone, consumer or investor, know what's truly happening? Ben, your industry is known for its complex and often secret supply chains. Is it truly feasible for a company like yours to be fully transparent about every component?
Full transparency is a logistical nightmare. As I said before, the complexity is immense. But there's another factor: trade secrets. Our supply chain, our list of suppliers, the materials we use, These are core parts of our competitive advantage. To make all of that public would be like a restaurant publishing its secret recipes. Our competitors would have a roadmap to replicate our products. We can make reasonable efforts, we can have codes of conduct, we can perform spot audits, but demanding absolute granular transparency for every single element is an unrealistic and strategically dangerous goal for any competitive business.
Anya, what level of transparency do you believe is sufficient? And is the trade secrets argument a valid one?
The trade secrets argument is a smokescreen, used to hide what companies don't want people to see. Nobody is asking for the precise chemical composition of a battery or the blueprints for a microchip. Transparency is about labor practices and environmental impact. Where do you source your cobalt from? What are the working conditions in the factories that assemble your phones? What is your carbon footprint? These are not trade secrets. They are matters of public interest. Moreover, the claim of it being unfeasible is becoming weaker every day. Technologies like blockchain are now creating immutable, transparent ledgers that can track a product from the mine to the store shelf. It is becoming technologically possible to provide this information. The only barrier left is the corporate will to do so. True transparency is the bedrock of trust. Without it, all of a company's claims about being ethical are just empty marketing slogans.
We're nearing the end of our time. I'd like to give you both a final moment to summarize your positions. Mr. Carter, your closing statement, please.
The desire for a perfectly ethical world is admirable, but we must operate in the world we have, not the one we wish for. The practical application of what Dr. Sharma proposes is deeply flawed. It places an impossible burden on individual companies, creating a competitive disadvantage for those who try, and an easy path for those who don't. It will inevitably raise prices for consumers, hurting the most vulnerable among us. A business's primary duty is its own economic health, which provides jobs and prosperity. Meaningful, lasting change cannot come from this piecemeal, company-by-company approach. It must be driven by strong international agreements and by national governments willing to enforce their own laws. That is where our energy should be focused.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. And Dr. Sharma, your final thoughts?
To argue that a company's only duty is to profit is an outdated and dangerous idea that has led us to the crises we face today. Ethical responsibility is not a peripheral concern. It's an essential, non-negotiable part of modern business. The short-term costs of due diligence are far outweighed by the long-term benefits of a stellar reputation, fierce consumer loyalty, and truly sustainable and resilient operations. This is not about idealism. It's about a more advanced and intelligent form of capitalism. The most innovative and successful companies of the 21st century will not be those that chase profit at any cost. They will be the ones that prove, decisively, that profit and principles can, and indeed must, coexist for a better future.
And on that forward-looking note, we must conclude. My sincere thanks to Dr. Anya Sharma and Mr. Ben Carter for their incredibly insightful and passionate perspectives. You have laid bare the central tension between what is morally right and what is economically practical. For our audience, the debate leaves us with a critical question. As consumers, what role do we play in this complex equation? Thank you for